Good day, grade 7 learners. Welcome to the week 3 of our topic in English 7, which is passive and active voices. By the way, I am Sir Gilmark Dinovilla, your English teacher. This lesson highlights the grammatical features and forms of the voices of the verb. This also focuses on points to be considered in transforming active voice to passive voice and vice versa. You are expected to differentiate active and passive voices of the verb, transform statements from active voice to passive voice and vice versa, and use active and passive voices in varied contexts. Now, are you ready? Let's have this learning task number 1. Just answer yes or no to know who had the sweetest parents or guardians during childhood days. Number 1. Were you given a pasulubong by your parents? Number 2. Were you allowed to play outside with your friends? Number 3. Where you get a reward for every good thing you've done? Number 4. Were you given a baon amounting to 20 pesos and above? Number 5. Were you allowed to watch TV from time to time? Number 6. Were you fetched by your parents or guardians in school? Number 7. Were you given time to concentrate on your studies? Number 8. Were you allowed to use gadgets from time to time? Number 9. Were you taught positive values at home? And last, number 10. Were you taken to any facilities such as mall, park, etc.? Okay, now please count the number of your yes answer. Did you already count your yes? Now, please refer on the legend. 1 yes is equivalent to 1 point. 1 to 5 yes means your parent or guardian is moderately sweet. 6 to 8 means they are sweet. And 9 to 10, they are very sweet. But please remember that the given statements are just some of the ways on how our parents, guardians, can show their sweetness to us. There are still other ways which may not be indicated above as to how they can let us feel how they love us. Now let's move on to learning task number 2. Write A if the statement is in active voice and B if it is in passive form. Are you ready? But before that, let us have this example. The man eats the hamburger. This sentence is in active voice. The next sentence, the hamburger is eaten by the man. This form is in passive voice. Now, observe carefully the two sentences and differentiate each sentences to each other so that you can know the active voice pattern and the passive voice pattern. Are you ready? Let's go. Number 1. The doctor visited her patients in the hospital. Number 2. The medicine was administered by the nurse to the patients. Number 3. The lesson was delivered in a well-planned session. Number 4. Claudine Gale reminded the teachers to submit their reports. Number 5. The fire prevention report was drafted by Edward. Number 6. Bea's chin underwent a medical procedure yesterday. Number 7. The seeds were distributed as part of urban farming project. Number 8. Josephine dedicated her life to serve her husband. Number 9. Savvy's car was bought from a car shop last month. Number 10. The king ordered the arrest of lawless citizens. Now, I hope you get all the correct answer from the learning task number 1. Are you ready in learning task number 2? Now, in learning task number 2, you are going to draw the air cycle. Then, in 4 to 5 sentences, explain how air cycle occurs. This is the drawing that you need to draw and explain. Now, can you start? Okay, I hope you have written well the air cycle. Now let's move on. Let's talk about it discussion. Let's discuss about the voices of the verb. The voices of the verb focuses on the function of the subject being either the doer or performer or the receiver of the action. They are classified as to active and passive. Active voices occurs when the subject of the sentence acts as the performer of the doer of the action, while passive voice indicated that the subject of the sentence is the receiver of the action. Though it is not always present, the doer of the action in the passive voice is introduced by the preposition by. Examples. This is an active sentence. The teachers prepared the materials for their classes. Now let us identify each part of the sentence. The teachers is the doer of the action, while prepared is the verb. The materials for their classes is the receiver of the action. Next examples, we have here the passive sentence. The materials were prepared by the teachers for their class. Let us identify each part of the passive sentence. The materials is the receiver of the action, while were prepared is the verb of the sentence. By the teachers is the doer of the action. And for their classes, this is only an adverbial phrases modifying the verb. Remember, to change active to passive or vice versa, remember this pattern. The active voice structure. It is the doer of the action plus verb plus receiver of the action. Let's have this example. The doer of the action is the man. The verb is eats. and the receiver of the action, the hamburger. Once again, the sentence is, the man eats the hamburger. How about in passive voice structure? First one is the receiver of the action plus auxiliary verb and main verb, which is always on the past participle form, plus by plus doer of the action. Now let's have example of each part. Receiver of the action, the hamburger. The auxiliary verb is. The main verb, which is in past participle form, is eaten. And by doer of the action, the man. So the sentence in the passive voice structure, the hamburger is eaten by the man. Now, active voice and passive voice on different tenses. A simple present tense. Let's have this example. In active voice, Jason prepares his meals. In passive voice, it became, his meals are prepared by Jason. Next, we have the simple past tense. Ethan informed his clients on the status of their order. In passive voice form, his clients were informed by Ethan on the status of their order. Now, can you see the difference between active and passive voice? Now let's move on to the next tense, the simple future tense. In active voice, the students will submit their report tomorrow. The passive voice, their report will be submitted by the students tomorrow. Now, can you see the difference between active voice and passive voice in simple future tense? Let's move on to present perfect tense. The school has decided to shut off its operations. In passive voice, its operations has been decided to shut off by the school. Now, observe again the difference between the active and passive voice. Can you notice the difference between them? Let's move on to past perfect tense. The active voice, Athena, had studied English before she moved to the US. In passive voice, the English had been studied by Athena before she moved to US. Did you also see the difference? As well, observe the underlined part of each sentences. Let's move on to future perfect tense. In active voice, Anthony will have baked the cake before he leaves. While in passive, the cake will have been baked by Anthony before he leaves. Did you see again the difference? I hope you can perform well in our next activities. Remember, in changing active to passive voice, please always observe your auxiliary verb, whether it is plural, singular, and of course, the tenses. Let's have this example. The sentence is, Max caught big fishes. So, let's have the pattern. In active voice, it starts with the doer of the action, which is Max, and the verb caught, which is also in the past tense. And the receiver of the action, big fishes. Now, if we are going to change it into a passive voice, let's have one by one the structure of the passive voice. Let's have the receiver of the action, which is big fishes. So big fishes is plural. And the tense that we have in active voice is in past tense. So the plural of the auxiliary verb and the past tense is were. So we use were for the big fishes. And the verb in the past participle form is caught. And just add by, preposition by, and the doer of the action, Max. So the sentence, from active voice, Max caught big fishes, became big fishes were caught by Max in passive voice. Now let's move on to learning task number 4. Convert the following sentences from active voice to passive voice. But before that, let's try this example. Always remember the pattern from active voice to passive voice. To make the sentence to passive voice, remember it will start with the receiver of the action plus the auxiliary verb, but remember in auxiliary verb, please ask first if it is plural or singular or in what tense. Followed by verb in past participle form. Always remember that the verb will be always in past participle form in passive voice. Then followed by the word or preposition by. Then lastly, added by the doer of the action. The sentence example in active voice is the manager filed a resignation. The manager is the doer of the action. Filed is the verb and a resignation is the receiver of the action. To make it in passive voice, let's start with the receiver of the action, which is a resignation. Now, let us ask what verb we use in active voice. Filed is in past tense. So we are going to use the past form of the verb. And a resignation is in singular form. So we're going to use was. Was is in singular form and in past tense, followed by the verb which is in past participle. So the past participle of the verb filed is also filed, followed by, and the doer of the action, the manager. So the sentence, from active voice, the manager filed a resignation, became a resignation was filed by the manager, which is now in passive voice. Next example. The student of Barangay 1 recited the poem about love. The student of Barangay 1 is the doer of the action. And the verb is recited. And the receiver of the action, the poem about love. Now, let us try again to convert it in passive voice. First, you need to know which is the receiver of the action. So, in the sentence, the receiver of the action is the poem about love. Now, let us ask again. What is the verb used in active voice? Recited. It is in the past tense. Now, let us ask again, what is the receiver of the action? It is plural or singular. The poem is the receiver of the action is in singular form. So past tense and singular form, we are going to use was, then added by the verb in past participle. So the past participle of recited is also recited. Then add by, then the doer of the action, which is the student of Barangay 1. So the active voice sentence, the student of Barangay 1 recited the poem about love, became the poem about love was recited by the student of Barangay 1.